Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Garden of Ethan. Welcome back. We haven't, have I not? I don't think I've done one. The last time I think I did one of these is when I went away for a weekend, and then we've been busy. We've actually been very, until like this last weekish, we've had shows be going, shows to watch. And it's actually kind of crazy because I feel like at the end of last week, kind of going into this week, is the first time that we haven't had sort of a new show slash full packed schedule in a very long time, which is fun because it opens up. I've got to. The part of me saying this is holding, hopefully, myself accountable to be putting up a poll, hopefully soon, about some more shows that we want to get into. I don't know how many more we'll take on board because I think as soon as kind of September rolls over, which we're nearly into, can we talk about that? How the hell are we so far through this year already? I will never know. But there'll be more shows coming out then. I think there's some big ones. I know is it October possibly? The new season of Arcane comes out. I don't know why they're all slipping my mind, but I know there's some good ones on the list. I think the new Dune show comes out. Actually, that might not have a date attached to it yet. But I am excited for some of them to come. But we need a couple more to spread out. I think I want to do at least one show, one gay show. So we'll try and figure that out because we're currently got Crashing, and I just started Korra, The Legend of Korra, and we're doing a rewatch. If you watch this, I don't know if you've watched that, I would suggest maybe checking it out because I have a love for that series more than like anything else in life. So go check that out if you'd like. The Legend of Korra is fantastic. Avatar, the universe. It's a bit different than I usually do. It's more commentary essay-esque than our usual reaction, which is fun. I'm talking a lot more, but that's not the worst thing. To some people it is the worst thing, but to me it's very fun. First of all, sorry if I sound awful. I have been a bit sick over the past week. That's also why we have had a good couple of missed days. I'm trying to not be as, when you're like hard on yourself because you're like, I missed some days. I'm like, I'm sick. I'm allowed to be sick sometimes. Also, it was just it's one of those things where I wasn't that sick, but God, did I get hit by it like a truck in the same way? I don't know how to explain being both really sick and not actually that sick at all. But to weirdly segue, I made a post over on Patreon about this, and this will go up on Patreon. But I did a whole spiel because I've been missing some days, but now it's on YouTube. For anyone who cares, I mean, if you're watching this, you might care because you're coming in. We're having a little respite from your lives, hearing about mine, having a little segue down the crazy journey of, semi-crazy journey of my life. I definitely have weird interactions because that's what I draw in life. But I got a new job, which is very fun. It's exciting. I've had it for 2 or 3 weeks now. So again, that has very come into play over learning a new schedule because while I'm only working a bit, not heaps, but then sometimes a lot, you can fill it, it's back and forth. And then I've just been trying to figure that out and then getting this, making sure I'm still keeping up with this. But, when you start kind of a new job, new work, everything's always going to be a lot more hectic at the start. So I was like, I'm just going to make sure I get that in and then we keep this complete going, because obviously I wasn't planning on stopping this at all and making videos, reactions, all that fun stuff. But I was like, I need to turn it back just for like a week or two to make sure I can figure out something new. Because this is the thing that I want to talk about. Starting a new job in any like profession, anything. Obviously, there are complete extensive how much someone's doing in any sort of job, and it works out different. Could be very physical, very mental, draining, very slow. There's so many different things to it. But starting a new job really takes a lot, even when you're completely, either qualified for. I'm not doing some crazy, job or anything, but like anything you do, it's just so much like learning new things. Even if you're like qualified for it, to learn all these like new ways, especially since every workplace obviously has a culture of how things are run, and you're like, oh, I want to be able to fit into how, they do everything, and, make friends, or at least make sure some people like you. I don't know. Maybe there are people out there that don't care that much about that. I actually imagine there would be. When I was going through, like, to get new jobs, looking for work, which I think I talked about in a podcast ages ago. I had one friend that is like, oh, you could come back where you used to work, like at a different location. I was like, A, no. B, maybe. I was like, there was that thought of, I was like, if I do that, I'm not talking to anyone. Obviously, I'm not going to be like rude and horrible, but I was like, I don't really want to make friends. I just, some jobs you kind of just want to do the job, and you don't want to, be there for everything else that entails. This new job, it's been a wild roller coaster of a couple of weeks. It has been very fun. It's very strange. Working, I haven't worked for a little bit. B, working in a place where everyone is so nice. And that sounds like a weird thing. I ain't complaining. I'm actually very happy. Place established, a work for. I can't even figure out. Business, yeah, we'll say business. A business that has like a lot of places, like people there that are so unbelievably nice is very good for me, because I'm very loud and extroverted. I can be, but you people are a lot. It takes me a while to get in, and I was like, whoa. From where I used to work, I have had heaps of friends there, and it was fantastic. But not everyone. Also, this new place, a lot of people are more similar age, which helps. A bit younger than me, but it's kind of like, oh, we kind of get the vibes. Whereas when I used to work at a supermarket, there's people from all walks of life, which was fantastic. But sometimes you can't, like, some people just don't want to care or talk to the young people, which is absolutely fine. I wouldn't want to either if I was, probably a certain age. Like, some people were the best. Like, some of the older staff members were fantastic and so fun. But I understood that. But this place, like, everyone that I've talked to, maybe they're not thinking it, but they've been so nice and welcoming, which is like kind of a lovely thing. But I'm like, do I trust it? I'm like, how can you always be so nice? It's such the pessimistic part of me. Is like, what the hell's going on? How's everyone doing this? But I think they're just genuinely like good and nice people, which is crazy. But I had my training. I did my first couple of shifts. Doing a first day is so strange, especially when you haven't done, like, my last job. I worked it for 5 years. I've had like a year off. I took a gap year. I was doing this. Obviously, I count this as both a great passion hobby and a job, like a bit of both, because I feel like anything that sorry, my nose is just like a little bit red from a sickness. So I was like, is something going on? I feel like if you make money from something, it kind of falls under job. So yeah, job. And this, I work for myself. Well, technically, you could say YouTube or Patreon, but work for myself. So doing a first day for the first time in like 6 years was like wild. Or just like a first week, first month. Those first are like a lot. You're listening to people again, you're talking to people again, you're figuring out all these things, and it is wild. It's very fun, but it's kind of daunting, especially since my last job, I worked there for so long, and when I used to be able to train people, tell people what to do. I was, one of the, I worked at a supermarket. It wasn't anything crazy, but I was like higher up in my little department. So I knew everything. And then going into somewhere where you're like, oh, I know nothing how to do everything. You have to get everyone to help you is so like, what the hell is going on? But it's been very fun. This last week has been tough because I have been feeling very under the weather. I work in a place that like deals with children, so therefore I was like, oh, some of them were like, yeah, people get sick here a lot because you're dealing with kids a lot, and I was like, when you had that sort of thing with yourself, maybe a red flag. Sometimes I'm like, no, I wouldn't get sick. I'm too good to get sick. I'm not gonna get sick. Like, what's gonna happen? They're gonna sneeze and I'm gonna be sick. Probably that's exactly what happened. And I was like, oh, I get it. And also I'm like, is this going to be happening every month? Because if it is happening every month, I am going to lose it because I don't want to be sick that much. Also, how do parents do it? Like, do parents get sick a lot? Because they're, like, maybe not around their kids, but their kids are around kids. You know what I mean? And this has opened up to a world, because I come from a family, like, I have no siblings, I don't really have many cousins, so it's like that thing of, like, I've never really had to interact with kids. I was like, how does sickness work and spread? Because I know, obviously, people get colds, bacteria, all that stuff, but I was like, how does it work with children? How does this happen? I was like, do people just get sick all the time? That sounds like a nightmare. I was like, why are people choosing to do this? You gotta pay for them, you get sick all the time. Obviously, like, love and care of a child, but I was just like, what the absolute hell is going on? But yeah, so, like, I picked up a heap of shifts last week, which I did before I got sick, and then, first week, I was appropriately fine to work. I was just, like, very kind of exhausted a bit. Like, it's one of those things, and that's what I was saying at the start, was I was both not very sick, but it took so much out of me just because I was, like, adapting to this new work. I also think it's one of those things where I would assume most people have experienced this. When you're doing something new, you kind of get fatigued really easily, because it's just your body's learning something different and you're kind of going through different things, and especially having taken a year off, like working a job where I'm somewhere doing something all the time. Because this, I'm like, wow, yeah, like I can talk for ages, but I'm also sitting down and now, like, standing up. It's just a very different thing. So I think I was, like, worn down. Also, germs from kids possibly got me sick, and then just this new schedule had taken me out. I was like, I woke up this morning because I got a couple of days off, and I'm like, whoa, I am just, like, needing to recuperate, and I've been trying to get some work done today, and this is the first thing I've recorded. I have so much to, like, stockpile and, like, figure out this, like, going forward, and getting my stuff together. I'm like, wow, all I want to do is just absolutely rest. So I'm going to try and keep going. I'm going to try and get one of those polls out, or even just a post been like, recommendations, thoughts, and then I'll put a poll out. So hopefully I'll get one of those up soon, so we can get something going again and get everything restructured, figured out. And this is a good way. It's like hey, this is our fun thing. We get to catch up, talk. You get to hear about my week escape, but also kind of like a little life update. But also, starting in a new place is interesting because you get to meet so many new people, which has been, as I said, fantastic, because all these people are so nice. But oh my god, is it wild having to do the, like, spiel about yourself, like, 40 times over, like, the last couple of weeks about, like, and I'll still be, like, meeting new people that work there, but it's just like people want to know about you, and, you both want to know a lot about them, but you can't ask too many questions because they're all learning a couple of new people. You're learning a lot. So I'm like, I can't learn everything about everyone because it will cook my brain. My brain will be absolutely fried. But everyone's like, like, what do you do? Like, how old are you? Like, what did you do before this? Are you uni, blah, blah. And I'm just like, just like, yes, I have done this for this long, I took this off, I, went to this, I studied this, blah, blah, and you just like give the same information. I'm like, I feel like I should have written out a card. So I'm like, oh, they come up to me, I'm like, here's my personal info. Take that. That's my social security number. You can know everything about me on this card. But it's been fun, at least, like, talking about it. Also, I think interesting going into a new place with, like, younger people. I am on the older side of it, which is wild coming from the supermarket I used to work at, because now I'm at the... I wouldn't say I'm not the oldest, I don't think. They definitely have, people my age, but a lot of people are a little bit younger than me. So it's a bit interesting. One person, it was the funniest and the best conversation I had. They asked me if I was still in high school, and I was like, whoa. I was like, wasn't expecting that. Love it. I was like, ooh, how young do I look? I was like, I don't get ID'd anymore in certain places. I was like, oh, I must be looking young and great today, because no one has asked me if I'm in high school. Usually, I remember when I worked in like the first week of my supermarket job when I was 18, someone asked me if I had kids, and I was like, oh no, I'm starting to look old. Now, being, obviously older, I'm turning 25 this year. Someone like you in high school, I'm like, oh my God, maybe I should start auditioning. Maybe I should start auditioning for the high school shows if I can still pull it off. Granted, most shows, they're putting... So, some people definitely don't look high school age. I think they're getting better with that, but that's a whole, like, separate thing. But it's also really funny because I was talking to him, I was like, no, not really. And he's like, oh, you're at university? I was like, no, I sort of have a degree. And he like continued talking to me about it. He's like, oh, like, how old are you? And he's like, if you don't mind me asking. I was like, I do not care the slightest. I was like, I'm 24. I turned 25 in like a couple of months. I think it's a couple of months now. And I was like, yeah, I graduated high school in this year. So the way in Australia it works, this is context for I think the funny bit of this conversation. I have to explain it first because I realize not every country works the same. In Australia, you go from prep to year 6. That's your primary school, which is your first school. You like have kindergarten and then primary school, which is prep, which is kind of like a grade 0 sort of thing, to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You do those years there, and then you go to high school, and that's your full education, unless you want to go to university or, do TAFE and there's plenty of ways to do around it, but that's like the general course. So, high school's year 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I was telling him, I was like, oh, I graduated high school, I finished year 12 in this year. And he was like, oh, I was in year 6 in that year. And I was like, holy shit. So when I was leaving high school, he was going into high school. He was maybe in primary school still. And that sort of jump of like gap where now it's like not like to meet someone in that age range is not like weird because you're like, oh, you're just young, but to like have that sort of thought process of it, it's wild. Because now we're like colleagues at work. We work together. Colleagues, I hate the word colleagues. I'm like, we work together. Colleagues is just so like removed somehow of like all, whether you're friends or not, just colleague. I hate the word colleagues. I'm sorry. It sounds so rude in my mind. I'm like, ugh, colleagues. Anywho, but we're in that same sort of bracket, even though he's younger. But to think that you're exiting a big stage of your life where he's going into that stage in that point of life, you're like, oh shit. And then I realize, and then I'm like, and there's people younger than him here that work here, which is it doesn't really matter. They're still all very nice, but just crazy. Coming from a place where it's wild. Age and time, wild thing. I don't know, new thought process. Whoa, feeling old. Though I say that, obviously I know I'm not. Don't worry, I always say that. And then older people, like my parents and stuff go, oh, wait until I know I'm not old, but you can still feel old when you're not. It's definitely a thing that you can feel. You can feel your age, especially when, also like you're working with like younger children and you're like, oh, now I feel really old because I have no idea what they're talking about half the time. They're talking and I'm like, I don't know anything you're talking about. And also sometimes you're like, the internet is ruining the younger generations, which you can really tell. You're like, oh, it's kind of like, honestly, getting to hear how they like talk and interact is this whole like, you could write, a thesis on like how, the internet is influencing like I don't know. It's a whole crazy, obviously I'm not going to go into it that much, but wow, what the hell? Y'all, check what your kids are watching. That's my advice. I assume a lot of parents do, and I'm assuming also it's way too hard these days. I feel like when I was a kid, there wasn't like ways to get around certain things, and kids weren't as crafty, and also that we just didn't, like when I was a kid, we didn't know as much, unless you're like really into technology, you didn't know as much about how to do certain things or how to hide certain things or how to get access to certain things. Nowadays kids are smart, they like grow up with this stuff and they know what they're doing, and I'm like, oh shit, like it would probably be hell to be a parent. Obviously probably a beautiful loving experience, but god, to these, some of the kids, I'm like, oh no, I'm like, they are, things are, but also when you're a child, you go through certain years where I did it myself when I was a child, I was probably horrid, and then it kind of just, a lot of the time sorts itself out, but it's wild to watch. Also, I have a couple of fun stories from my, start work time. One was a older lady, a grandmother, was at the place I work with her grandchild and the grandchild's friend. And the old lady started talking to me. I also couldn't hear her very well as she was talking. I was like, yeah, what? And I was just doing I was standing a semi-distance away where I was like, I know you expect me to hear you, probably because I am young, but I was like, I ain't hearing shit. I'm sorry, I am deaf. So I was just like doing the polite nod. Also, I'm trying to work. And then she said something like, oh, that's my granddaughter, that one. And the other one with her, yeah, well, I think she's a bitch. I was like, excuse me, ma'am. Did you just call your grandchild's friend, also a young person, a bitch? I was like, whoa, calm down. I was like, also, maybe kind of funny, but also not the place. And then she kept going on for like, well, I'm going to say like 3 to 4 minutes. I was going to say 10 minutes, but it was definitely an over-exaggeration. And she was kind of just like saying some shit, and I was like, luckily, no one can hear her. I can barely hear her. I'm just going to let her talk, nod a couple times, walk off. I was like, what the hell is going on? I was like, yo, I was like, okay, it's not my place to say anything, but whoa. I was like, at least that little person didn't hear you, because that was a rather mean thing to say. And then there was also this one experience I had, which I thought was very funny. But I was telling someone off, there was an older person where I worked, probably maybe my age, a bit older, there with his girlfriend, and they were doing something wrong, so I had to go intervene, and there was like, they were just, things happened, he was like getting pissy because he looked like he was very big, buff, macho man, seemed like he had a very fragile ego of a person, and after he literally stormed off at one point to go prove something, I was like, whatever, my guy, go deal with that, don't care. And he came back, made a couple more arguments. I was like, whatever. I was like, cool, I don't care. I just had to tell you, when you have to tell people things because that's the rules at where you work or how things work where you work, and they kind of and I'm like, I don't I'm enforcing what I need to enforce, mister. I was like, really? It's not that deep. Sometimes when you're an adult and you can't do things and you're told you can't do the things, you just don't do the things and then you move on with your life. It's not that hard. But after he had his complete hissy fit and kept complaining, he came up to me and he said, politely, bro, oh, I went New Zealand there. That's not how he spoke. He's like, polite. Can we start this again? He said, politely, bro, can you stop looking at my girl? I was like, I have never been taken so far aback by a comment. I was like, honestly, sure. I was like, literally, the least interest I could take in a person was your girlfriend, mister. I was like, yeah, actually wasn't looking at her at all, but sure. And he said that, and I was just like, what the fuck? What does he think I'm looking at? Because maybe I'm staring at a wall right next to her, but I was like, sweetheart, I ain't looking at her in the bloody slightest. I did look at her when he had a little temper tantrum because I was like, what the hell? Why are you dating a man-child? But other than that, she kind of just filtered out. I was at work. I wasn't paying much attention to her. So he says that to me. He's like, can you stop looking at my girl? I'm like, after being dumbfounded for a second, I was like, oh yeah, you have to reply to this man baby. And I was like, of course, no problem. I leant around him and his giant muscles, and I said to her, oh, by the way, sorry about that. She looks at me and she goes, for what? And I was like, yes, exactly, ma'am. For what? You can't exactly hear our conversation, but for what? Because why would I have to apologize to you? Obviously, I didn't have to. I thought it would just be a nice thing to do, because obviously, if someone did feel uncomfortable that I was looking, even though it's, his sort of thing, and he's taking this situation and moving it, I was like, I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable. Of course, I'll give her a quick apology, because if she had felt anything, I wouldn't want that, because literally couldn't have been further from the truth. Me, a very gay man, staring at his girl. So if I was staring at her, maybe I was thinking, ooh, her makeup's pretty. The most, non-fucking threatening thing in the world. She was very pretty. Just couldn't care less. It's so funny. I kept thinking about it. The more I thought about it, the more funny it is. I really wanted to say to him, didn't feel like a safe space to go, look, dude, very gay, very not looking at your girl, because, hate crimes exist. And he was given violent energy. I didn't feel, it's one of those things where I was like, I don't feel threatened or scared of him. I don't think he's going to do anything. But it was one of those things where I was like, I'm not going to tell him, but it's very hilarious that he thinks that. I was like, extremely hilarious. I was also like, shut the fuck up. But after I gave the quick apologize, she said, for what? I was like, he'll explain it to her, and hopefully she'll fucking have a go at him. Because I was like, you need to get him in line. I was like, you need to figure him out because he's wild. After he told me that, I said sorry. She said, for what? He walks off and leaves. He leaves the place that I work. And I go, good riddance. And she just kind of followed him, looking really confused. And I feel bad for her, because she probably was confused, because she's probably like, what the absolute fuck is going on? Why is my man-baby boyfriend running out of here? It was a very strange interaction. It was very funny interaction. For me, hilarious. Just the thought of a man, maybe like props to me, that maybe he's like, that guy, maybe maybe there's something going on. But the fact that the fact that someone, I feel like, is obviously, there's a part of me. There's a part of me that like understands. But do I? I'm like, obvious. I'm at work. I'm not there to stare at people, that I find attractive. I'm there to do my job. Like, obviously, when people are at work, they can, that can happen. But oh my god, I was like, the last thing I thought he would say or ask when he was mean is that I was looking at his girlfriend. And I guess he felt threatened by me. I mean, maybe that's a little bit of a compliment. Maybe that's a little bit of a compliment. I hope she's doing well. She seemed like great. She seemed great. He seemed awful. You know when you like have such a small interaction into someone else's life, and you just really wonder where they are now. What's going on now? I'm like, I wonder where they are. Wonder where he is. I hope she dumped him because he seemed pathetic. It was just one of those things. Oh my god, biggest man baby. Anywho, you guys met a man baby recently? Because I have, and it was wild. I've told this story to like everyone because even I'll tell this story and people do not find it that interesting or funny, but to me it's just the funniest fucking thing because I was like, what do you expect? What do you think? No, I'm not. No, I'm not looking at her. I'm like, cool. You think that? Maybe you should look maybe you should look deeply into my eyes to see that I'm staring at a fucking wall because I'm, maybe I'm bored. Maybe that's it. Oh my god. It was the best. It was wild. I can't actually wait. This is a fun thing about working is hopefully more crazy stories will come because it was a wild time. And the Wild West out there. And things are happening. But I think that's it. They're my two like favorite stories from the last couple of weeks. Maybe more will come. You know what? There's both of the you want to invite chaos into your life, but also possibly not because chaos can take sharp turns downhill really bad. Whereas you're like, it's really fun, and then something really bad happens. So touch wood, we're going to hope for some maybe slight bits of happy chaos or funny chaos. Not anything too bad. But yeah, that's been my last couple of weeks. Big update since I've done a last little podcast episode, little update. Hopefully we'll be getting back to schedule over the next... I'm hoping over the next week I'll really start getting into it. It's just a weird adjustment period and then everything should be getting back. I think I talked about in the last one that I wanted to set up my gaming channel, which maybe this audience doesn't connect to that, but I hope to be putting some stuff there, so maybe there might be not like another show running while I do something on there, a day a week or something, but I'm excited to see how we kind of start structuring things going forward. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed. I hope you got to have a bit of fun listening to my ramblings of this week, some funny stories, some how weird new workplaces, wild stuff. But yeah, I hope you've had a fantastic time listening. I hope you're having a great day, and I hope to see you in the next one.